All right, thanks for being here. I'm Chief Kim Jacobs, and I've got a few introductions that I'd like to make. First of all, to my left is Deputy Chief Tim Becker. He is over the investigative subdivision. He was assigned there last November and has, ever since being assigned there, been taking a look at a lot of the operations in that subdivision and asking for information. And he's going to address a lot of the questions that have been coming up and some of the things that are going on in his subdivision here as soon as I'm done. But I'd also like to introduce Sergeant Shantae Boxell, who is our new public information sergeant. She'll be working with Denise and answering a lot of your questions and handling a lot of the typical media requests that come in every day. And so please get to know Shantae and work with her and Denise to for the typical stuff, and then if it's a question for me or somebody else, they'll at least push that information up to me, and I'll be able to weigh in on whether or not I want to be part of that answer or just let her handle it. I have full confidence in her. She's a veteran officer, a veteran supervisor, has worked a long time in the division counterintelligence or criminal intelligence unit, and I appreciate everything that she's done and her willingness to be in much more of a spotlight and the bright lights that we get sometimes from the media. So she'll be able to help you in the future moving forward. Also, Commander Joe Eckenrode is present with us as well. He has been recently assigned to the Narcotics Bureau, which includes the Vice section, which is pretty much what we're going to be addressing today. Deputy Chief Becker is going to describe some of the things that he has been doing, and then at the end of that, we're going to answer some questions that you might have. We know that there's an awful lot of speculation, opinions, social media discussions about a lot of things happening, in particular in Vice, and we'd like to be upfront about what we're doing with regard to that, but I also would like to encourage everybody that is out there with the questions about Vice to understand that we have a lot of investigations going on. We're very interested in the truth. The rumors, the speculation, all of that do not necessarily amount to the truth, but if there is some evidence that anybody has, I always encourage them to contact our Internal Affairs Bureau. We do not tolerate bad cops here, and if we've got the evidence to prove that they are, then I think our record shows that we will address that bad behavior. So I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Chief Becker, and then we'll both be available for questions afterwards. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. Obviously, events of the last 45 days have rightfully drawn a lot of scrutiny to our Vice section and our operations. To address these concerns and to plot a good path forward, I have directed my personnel to do a comprehensive review over everything that we do in the Vice unit over the next 4 weeks. This is not unlike a similar review that we conducted in the Crimes Against Persons Bureau earlier this year with a goal of increasing our success in homicide investigations. Chief Jacobs, Mayor Ginther, City Attorney Zach Klein, and the City Attorney's Office have all been consulted and are supportive of this direction. The review is being done to ensure that all policies and procedures are sound and in accordance with the mission and vision of the division. During this review, only the most critical cases will be worked. The pause is necessary not only for the division to redesign the path into the future, but to regain the trust of the community. Due to the nature of the assignment, Vice work is unpleasant at best. We task our detectives with investigating salacious activities that are relatively minor in terms of criminal penalties, yet very cancerous to our communities. These detectives are husbands and wives, they're mothers and fathers, and they were hired as officers due to their good background and the good choices they made prior to being a police officer. Now we ask them to go associate with persons who are making poor decisions and spend their days with them so they can enforce the laws of our city and state. This is no easy task, but many of our detectives do this very successfully. However, as a division, we do have an obligation to ensure that all our citizens and our personnel are protected through good policies and practices. The division has previously confirmed that the activities of a few of our vice section members are currently under criminal or administrative investigation. These investigations are complicated and they take time, but they're all on the front burner and the investigators are following the evidence at this point. None of the investigations are being conducted by members of the units under investigation. If at any point credible evidence is uncovered to indicate that there's a risk to the public, then the division, the chief, and I will immediately take action. I was the acting chief of police when allegations against Officer Mitchell first came forward in mid-August. This was less than 1 week prior to the officer-involved shooting he was involved in. I did not relieve him of assignment at that time because no credible evidence had been presented to indicate he was a risk to the public. He currently remains off work and he's recovering from a very serious injury. While the chief and I are updated on these investigations regularly to protect the sanctity of these investigations, I really can't go into specific details at this time. Moving forward, our detectives will enhance their efforts to collaborate with the city administration and the community on programs that have proven to be successful. These programs, such as the nuisance abatement program, which has shut down many businesses and hotels in our city, and street prostitution programs that involve the community and offer a variety of social services resources, have proven successful and they will not be stopped while this pause is going forward. We're striving to increase the effectiveness and efficiency at attacking the demand side of prostitution while simultaneously understanding that arrests often lead the prostitutes into catch court, which can be life-changing and may break the cycle of prostitution. The opioid epidemic, which has overtaken our state, directly contributes to the increased number of street prostitutes in our neighborhoods. We should all be able to agree that our neighborhoods should be free of sex trade in the streets, alleys, yards, and vacant houses, and that humans should not be trafficked. In the last 3 years, our city has received over 600 prostitution complaints via the 311 complaint line, and my detectives have filed over 4,000 charges for soliciting and loitering. These crimes will not be ignored, but they must be handled in a manner that instills trust and confidence in the community that we serve. Chief Jake.
Okay. Any questions?
Chief, you guys mentioned that there was a pause as a result of this. Can you talk a little bit more about that? How long is the pause? And you mentioned there were only specific portions of the vice unit that it would be affected. Talk about that.
Practically everyone in VICE is going to be tasked with providing information to Deputy Chief Becker and I. We've asked for numbers, we've asked for policies, we've asked them to do some research on what they consider to be the best, most effective ways of doing their jobs. We've asked them to do some research from other agencies and look around at how other agencies effectively deal with some of these same issues that we continue to deal with here in this city and that we've tasked with the VICE officers to deal with. As you know, there's a variety of things that VICE encompasses. You know, that's gambling, that's alcohol, that's prostitution, very many different kinds of vices and addictions and various other things. So we've put a request into our VICE personnel to provide a lot of information to us. It will be due within 28 days. And so during that 28 days, they're going to be mostly tied up answering those questions, looking for the information, compiling some statistics that we want to have. If we've only made one arrest, which obviously is not true, doing one particular thing, then maybe we don't focus on that anymore. You know, we heard a lot about strip clubs and what kind of a lot of people that at least commented social media wise feel about strip club enforcement. There are laws regarding strip clubs, and we know that sometimes bad behavior happens in there, and or human trafficking or corruption or some type of other, you know, maybe organized crime potentially. So we're going to look at all of our functions in VICE and get a lot of information so that we can then discuss, set some priorities for the new commander, and then discuss that with the mayor and our administrators to determine which things we really want to focus our attention on.
So did you have, to follow up on that, did you have concerns about some of the vice officers and the activities they were doing in strip clubs? And is that coupled with the officer-involved shooting from the other week? I mean, are those together, those incidents, are they the reason for this pause?
I would say everything's related to it. The fact that Deputy Chief Becker was assigned just to the subdivision in November, the fact that we've got a new commander there, the fact that we've had some high-profile incidents that involve those officers, some either the same officers or the same section, have all played into adding to the urgency in which we need to look at their operations.
You mentioned that you don't tolerate bad cops. Are there bad cops in the vice unit?
If there are, I hope that we will get the evidence to determine that. And then we decide how bad that behavior is and whether or not they can continue to be on the Division of Police and or their assignments there.
Can you tell us more about what Andrew Mitchell is being investigated for prior to the incident?
I cannot. The investigations are criminal, and therefore we can't comment on them.
We understand there may be some audio from his cruiser. Is it possible to get that audio?
That's part of the criminal investigation, so it won't be available at this time.
After the investigation is over, it will be available?
Once it's a public record, it would be available, yes.
So he hasn't been, there's no information that's been filed or no indictment that's been filed in relation to him?
The investigations are not over. We're still
Right.
gathering information. So until we know whether or not criminal charges will be filed and or how that will progress, of course, there's the investigation that came from a citizen, and then there's also the criminal investigation of the officer-involved shooting that always occurs, that we do by our critical incident response team. That information will be presented to the Franklin County prosecutor, who will present it to a grand jury to determine whether or not that officer-involved shooting was within policy and within the law.
This 28-day period where they have to report back on the activities, does that essentially put the entire vice unit on ice?
Well, it's a pause, and as Chief Becker said, there will be some potentially, if something cropped up, we would direct them to address that if we feel that that is within, what we want to get done during that 28 days. If we have a community event that works in cooperation with the other resources, social services, we may very well task our officers to go out and make some arrests so that we can get people through into catch court and offer them some of the services that we have found out are very beneficial to getting some prostitutes some help that they might need.
And how many officers does this affect, this pause?
It's about 20. And that's not just officers, that's supervisors as well.
How many cases does this affect that will be put on pause?
It's not like that. Every day they're out there proactively looking for, what might be going wrong in a bar, an alcohol situation, it might be an after-hours club. It could be anything. So it's not a particular case as much as they won't be doing as much proactive work.
It's more operational.
Correct.
Chief, the citizen complaint against Officer Mitchell and then the shooting, what's the connection between those two?
We have no idea. That's the part of the investigation that we're going to try to determine. The fact is the connection is that it's the same officer. That's what we know now.
Was he on a specific vice duty during the time of the officer-involved shooting? Was he supposed to be in that area?
Well, that's what officers do in vice. They enforce prostitution complaints.
Sure, but with prostitution complaints, like crime can happen anywhere. Was he specifically assigned to that particular area, or was he investigating?
I don't have that information.
Okay.
I don't know the daily operations of how their sergeant would direct their, activities. We have a lot of complaints that occur from that side of town,
Sure.
And in fact, that's where I hear most of the complaints come from. So it's not at all unusual for our vice officers to be out there working.
You said that this review is in part due to new personnel in the command staff for the investigative subdivision. Would this review have taken place regardless of these events occurring, or did these two events, high-profile incidents in the last 45 days, expedite something that would have eventually happened within the next 12 to 18 months?
I'll let Chief Becker explain that one.
This absolutely would have happened. This is something I methodically do wherever I'm assigned. Have been questioning the personnel throughout the year. Primarily the focus on the big project I've been working on is homicide. That's reaching a different point, and this did expedite it. but this was something that was going to occur anyways.
As you'll recall, last year was our high year with the number of homicides that we had. And so that created an urgency for us to look at our operations in the homicide investigation field. And Chief Becker took that on and looked at the job tasks of a lot of different officers and determined whether or not we needed to reassign responsibilities, how we reassign cases, and all of that. So sometimes when we have something that pops up, we added new urgency to those reviews. But as you know, we're an accredited agency, so we do reviews of all of our policies within every 3 years. Every single one of our policies has to be looked at and updated as necessary. So we're in a constant state of looking at policies and procedures to determine that. But it also happens when we change command. And so I actually change commanders and deputy chiefs with the idea of getting fresh eyes on this particular operation. It not only makes all of our personnel better qualified to be a part of making decisions overall for the Division of Police, but also to get fresh eyes on operations so that it's not just somebody's idea of how it should be done, it's somebody else's idea of how it maybe should be done as well.
How many citizen complaints have come in about the Vice unit in the recent months? Has there been an uptick?
I can't speak from any known statistics. Of course, we had the Stormy Daniels complaint, and then we had certainly the one on Officer Mitchell. But I'm not aware of what the other numbers might be. I'm not aware of anything in particular.
Have there been any others this year prior to those incidents? Were there any citizen complaints about the Vice unit?
I can't tell you. I don't have the information. It could be. It'd be something I'd have to ask our Internal Affairs Commander.
Chief Jacobs, Derek Myers with Fayette Advocate. Lieutenant McFadden was placed on leave, and that 400-page internal memo, it talked about racially charged allegations in a hostile work environment. Can you talk a little bit about what the thought process has been behind on putting people on paid leave from the Vice unit pending allegations?
I'm not really sure I understand the question.
In the Stormy Daniels case, they haven't been they're not on paid leave according to the PIO. But Lieutenant McFadden was placed on paid leave for something that appears to be somewhat minor compared to, say, an unlawful arrest.
Well, that would be your opinion, and I make those decisions based on the information that I have at the time.
Do you expect crime to kind of change in trend during this pause?
I don't know that there is any way to determine that. We're talking about prostitution complaints that Vice would normally investigate. We get those calls daily, and so I expect that we'll continue to do those. And if we believe that there's some kind of a spike in Vice-related activities, we'll determine whether or not they need to be investigated by anybody in the Vice section or someone else. And we can always assign more patrol cruisers to a particular area that might be suffering from that as well.
This may seem an obvious question, but this pause does not prohibit patrol officers from stopping someone or arresting someone for a Vice-related crime just because the Vice unit is being reviewed during this 20.
There's no changes at all in the direction that we've given to our patrol officers with regard to what type of crime or incidents they want to investigate. Correct.
Do you have information that anybody in the Vice unit has gone against the wishes of top brass, or any instructions or memos put out? Has anybody disregarded any instructions?
It would be premature for me to answer that because I haven't seen the investigations. That's why we put it all down on a piece of paper and then have an opportunity to review all of the evidence. And so for me to prejudge like that would be, premature, first of all, and then second of all, I have to give them their due process.
And you mentioned that you want folks to come forward if they believe they have information about any officer.
Any.
What would you say to those who say, I'm scared to do that because these people know where I live, they've arrested me before, they know where I frequent, I'm scared of retaliation because I'm coming forward. What would you say to them?
First of all, I cannot protect them if I don't know that they are being harassed or bothered or in some other way affected by a police officer that is acting outside of the bounds of policy or law. So I have to know about it before I can take care of it. If they believe that they are being threatened or something like that, we would certainly address that and do whatever we can to make sure that they are protected from any type of retaliation or threats or anything like that. But I can't fix it if I don't know about it, so I really do need information. We do take anonymous complaints. However, if there's no corroboration to those anonymous complaints, I'm stuck contractually by not being able to investigate that. There has to be some type of corroborating evidence, something that would allow me to move forward with that information.
Chief Jacobs, on CPD social media, a lot of people are saying the latest police officer involved shooting, the suspect was shot 8 times. They expect answers right away. Explain the process of that it doesn't happen in days or even possibly weeks.
So the fact of the matter is that all of our police-involved shootings do require a lot of time and effort. There's a lot of physical evidence that needs to be collected. Then there's, especially in a case where there's a death occurred, we have to wait for the autopsy report. All of that takes a little bit of time. We consult with the prosecutor's office to determine what else they might need from our investigation, and then we have to turn it over to them. Fast is not our goal. Thorough is our goal, to get all of the evidence and make sure that we're making the right investigation for the prosecutor's office to send to the grand jury.
Okay, at this time, we're going to conclude the press conference. Thank you, Chief.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief Becker.
Sergeant Boxer.
I think that we will, if you have follow-up questions, if you could just address them to me or Denise, and then we'll get back with you as soon as we can. Thank you for coming out this afternoon. We appreciate it.